My name's Guneet Grewal, I go to University High School, and my documentary is titled Beneath the Surface. So my documentary is about mental health, specifically in teens, because I see it a lot in the people around me, and I know that a lot of people do as well. The reason why I was so passionate about this documentary is because I've had experiences like that myself, with people just being less than accepting of teenagers being able to experience mental health issues. And, well, everyone really, but especially teenagers, people don't take it seriously. My aim with people watching this documentary is not to convince them of a narrative that I crafted or some oh, I'm stringing everything together. What I did specifically and deliberately was provide everyone with the stories, the real people who are actually experiencing these things, so that the audience themselves can put together, yeah, this is absolutely something that needs to be taken seriously.
That they are in the midst of a real mental health crisis.
That is the finding of a troubling new CDC report on mental health.
42% of high schoolers have said that they feel persistently sad or hopeless.
That's up 14% from 2011.
1 in 5 high school students reported they'd seriously considered killing themselves.
My name is Cash Carrillo, and I am a UHS student.
My name is Evelyn Nelson, and I'm also a UHS student.
I'm Damaris Manny Munoz, and I'll be a rising senior.
Amelia Crony, I'm a senior in high school.
I've struggled with depression for a couple years now, I guess. Really, it was 6 months of especially bad time before my family and I figured out that I had actual clinical depression.
I have struggled with my mental health for about as long as I can really remember, so since I was 11 or 12 probably. And I also have been recently diagnosed with autism. I really seriously thought about committing suicide when I was 13 or 14, and then again when I was 16. I am doing better now. I'm talking to a therapist, and I'm on medications, a couple medications.
And I suffer from primarily depression, anxiety, and an eating disorder, which is anorexia. For depression, I've actually had it since 6th grade, but wasn't physically diagnosed until 9th grade. My anorexia had developed during quarantine when everything shut down. I decided to lose weight, but then it started to the point where I was excessively doing it a bit too much. And that was diagnosed because of my cross-country coach. She'd actually been the one who had told my mom to go see a professional.
I recently started being treated for depression and symptoms of anxiety. I would say the reasons that these came about had to do some with school pressure and with pressure on myself, but they were kind of always there. They just built up over a few years.
I wasn't very close to a lot of people when I became depressed, but the people I was close to, I more or less cut off. I was getting stuff done, but once I got home every day, I just kind of sat in bed and laid there because I did not want to do anything else.
So my mental health really affected my relationship with my parents first. I guess I was very socially isolated, and I always have been because again my autism makes it very difficult for me to connect with people and to form relationships. So I sort of have the opposite of Cash, where he tended to push people away, and I would scare people away because I would come on too strong. It got to a point where I was using academics to distract myself from my mental health struggles, but then I didn't really have anything outside of that.
I would say a majority of my peers suffer from a mental health issue. I know one of my acquaintances, she suffered from depression, and she didn't actually get it diagnosed until this year, where she was also found doing self-mutilation, self-harm. And my own best friend actually suffers from quite a bit of anxiety, but she hasn't been diagnosed with it completely. One of my friends in 7th grade, actually, before she moved, she told me that she had gone through the same thing as me. So I actually had been the one who helped her, and the fact that one of my close best friends actually suffered through almost the same thing I did was very, not only sad, but very connecting in a way, because I knew I wasn't alone.
But a lot of people go thinking that it's normal to feel that way or to feel just out of it or have struggles, but it's really not normal. I went for about 2 years like undiagnosed and not talking about my depression and all of the side effects of it. So what really breaks my heart is when I hear my friends talk about how they have similar experiences, but they're not looking to get help. They're against, or their parents are against therapy, and they don't think they need it, but it would help them. And I know it would help them because it helped me a lot.
My experience with the mental health conversation definitely varies widely depending on who I'm talking to about it. So my parents are very skeptical of people's mental health issues. They're those believers that it's sort of like self-inflicted. And then actually once I got my autism diagnosis, they really started to take my mental health struggles more seriously because I think they saw a cause. Because I think one of the biggest issues in the mental health conversation right now is that people assume that you have to have a reason. And my parents' thought was sort of like, your life is so good. You know, you live in an upper middle class family and you go to a good school. Why do you feel this way? And they couldn't wrap their minds around the fact that it wasn't anything that was happening to me. You know, there's not a reason for it.
I see it a lot in the Hispanic community as a Hispanic myself. I also believe the Asian community also goes through mental health problems as they have to be seen as perfectionists. And I also believe first generation people in general also suffer from a lot of mental health disorders because they just, as a first generation student, you have to consistently try to prove yourself to society.
So I'm part of the LGBTQ community, and I see mental health struggles a lot in the people around me. And sometimes it's used in a derogatory way of that LGBTQ people struggle with mental health problems because being queer is a mental health problem, but really it's the discrimination and the way that the world is sometimes working against us or sometimes pushing against LGBTQ students and youth in ways that negatively impacts their mental health. And I'd say that expands to pretty much all minority groups that face discrimination, backlash, or otherwise being felt out of place in school or just in their lives.
I think generally there is an issue with everybody not taking mental health as seriously as it should be taken. A lot of, the mental health presentations at school and stuff are just very corny, and they're very surface level, and they're very like rah, love yourself, which is not what people, I think, respond to, especially not high school students, saying stuff like that, like this is very serious, but then only sharing very surface level experiences with it. I think that causes a dissonance where you're like, well, you're saying it's serious, but you're not showing me that it's serious. And it's not going to be nice, and it's not going to be comfortable, and you're not going to feel good afterwards. But people have to be aware of it.
But I think that mental health is starting to come to light now. I don't think it's a new thing. People have always been mentally ill, and they've just, taken it out on everyone around them. It's going to be an uphill battle, and it's going to be a struggle, but those steps have to be taken, or else what else are we doing? We're just kind of kicking rocks.
I'm very fortunate enough to have a mental health location near me. So that's where I receive all my therapy and stuff. But I know some of my friends have to drive like 30, 40 minutes away because they don't have one close by. So starting to the regional level and institutions closer to home for them is better. And then we can start increasing it through the national level.
We need to start de-stigmatizing it, but also make it more of a treatable problem. Instead of any mental health problems being something that brings you down, it's something that there are ways in which you can be helped, and it's not that it's not normal, it's just that your brain needs a little bit more help to function how it needs to function. I'd say my final thought is that even if like a mental health problem isn't bad enough to be like diagnosable or medicated, there's nothing wrong with seeking just regular help, like meditating or changing certain things in your life to make you less stressed out. Getting treatment is not necessarily like a one option. There's so much out there, and people deserve to be helped.